Okay, I had to get cozy because I've never filmed a YouTube video, so I'm wearing my comfy poncho. I don't want to film a YouTube video, but I do want to share this really cool room makeover. So let's get into it. This is about to be the most extreme makeover that I've ever done. My qualifications so far are rearranging my bedroom since I was about 8 years old, and that's it. So the backstory is about a year ago, I went to my sisters-in-law and I said, hey, does anyone want to let me stretch my interior design wings and redecorate a room in their house? One of my sisters-in-law, very pregnant with her third child, agreed, but the budget was $600. To put that in perspective, you could probably buy one single well-made nightstand for about $600. And what we're trying to do is thoughtfully and beautifully redecorate an entire master bedroom on the budget of $600. Can it be done? Not exactly, but we're gonna see how close we can get. When starting any design project, I really like to start with what is and what isn't working in the space, and then also how does the room need to function. This bedroom is actually very large. There are not any traditional windows, but there's a large sliding door and an en-suite bathroom. So we don't have an abundance of natural light, but we also don't have a lot of architectural obstacles. That gives us flexibility with the layout. So starting with the nightstands, the existing ones are a little bit too small and too short for the height of the bed. Ideally, a nightstand should sit roughly at the level of the top of your mattress. If you're sitting up in bed, you shouldn't have to reach over to set something down. Swapping these out for taller and wider pieces will immediately improve the proportions of the room. The larger nightstands also add storage without disrupting symmetry, which is especially valuable in a primary bedroom. Storage-wise, the room has a tall dresser and a bulky armoire. With multiple large vertical pieces lining the walls of the room, it feels very heavy and crowded. The goal is to bring in better pieces that offer function and cleaner lines and a visual, lighter presence. Both she and her husband work from home, so this bedroom needs to feel restorative, not visually overwhelming. The goal here is to create something calm and flexible that feels finished now, but also leaves some room to layer in personality over time. For anyone who feels a little overwhelmed at committing to a bold color palette, this approach really works. You can build your base with some soft neutrals and then introduce interest through textiles, art, lighting, and smaller accents. We're going to move away from the stark white, but we're not going to go too dramatic. The goal is warmth and softness, a space that feels intentional and livable. By the end, it's not going to be completely renovated with $600, but we will get really close where she will be able to add in beautiful pieces that mean something to her down the road. So the desk chair was actually a $5 Facebook Marketplace find, and the seller was so motivated to get rid of it that he delivered it, which tells you everything you need to know about the condition of this chair. It was not good. Structurally fine, aesthetically very questionable. So this got sanded all around, and then after the sanding process, I used redecorate in pickled oak as a stain. I know this isn't usually what redecorate is used for, but I used it as a stain and watered it down so that the wood grain could show through because I really like the color of this particular redecorate paint. The seat that came on it was actually already pretty worn out, and I reinforced the seat cushion underneath, adding some new padding and straps from Amazon, and then I used some leftover fabric from a previous project. Next are some of the showstoppers. I found a pair of oversized nightstands on OfferUp for $50, and it took multiple messages to this seller before she responded, but persistence paid off because she also threw in 2 lamps for free, which we used in the project as well. The nightstands had great structure, 3 drawers each, and good proportions. Originally, I planned to paint them, mostly because of the detail on the front looked very tedious to strip and or stain, but I tested some paint samples and I just couldn't do it. The wood really deserved to stay visible, so I stripped them down. I used a clean strip, I believe, on this and took off all the varnish, which was quite satisfying. And then I wiped everything down with acetone to continue breaking down the old finish. Then I still had to sand a little bit to remove some of the red undertone. And then I also refinished these in the redecorate pickled oak. I watered this down so that some of the original wood would show through, and I just used this as a stain instead of what it's meant for. I coated them with a matte wax and swapped the hardware for an aged brass knob. The scale is now correct for the bed and the storage has significantly improved. Also, for some purists out there, this is not a perfect job by any means, but it was a huge upgrade from what they had and it didn't run us too much money in the way of supplies.
I love lamp. I love lamp.
So these lamps, which were thrown in with the nightstands for free, also needed a little help. They were very Z Gallery, like circa 2006. What I did here was apply a plaster gauze to build some bulk up on the dimension of the glass so it didn't look so smooth. This is actually the same type of gauze they use to splint and make casts. And then I used this feather finish cement product that I got online over the top, which adhered surprisingly well to the original glass base and it hardened really beautifully. After that, I painted it with a matte finish darker paint. It's actually an Armory color by Sherwin. And then for the shades, I wrapped them in some clearance upholstery fabric that I got at a local shop. The technique here was not elegant. Hot glue was involved, minor burns occurred, but the end result works and they are textural, sculptural, and proportionally they are appropriate for the room. The dresser. So this was an Ethan Allen solid wood dresser that I found for $100 on Facebook Marketplace. I believe it's maple, but I'm not 100% positive. I also considered painting this, but this one was fairly easy to refinish since all the lines are very clean and there's not a lot of detail work. So I used the same procedure as before. I stripped it down using acetone first, sanded, and then repeated the same process with the redecorate paint finish. I used a matte wax finish over the top and updated the hardware. So originally for their bed, I had been drooling over some of these beautiful upholstered beds that I see online, and I figured we could just do a headboard since they already had a bed frame holding up their mattress. But when I looked into it, some of the padding and the fabric alone would have costed more than what I ended up finding this headboard for. So I set that idea aside for a project with a little bit of a bigger budget, and I was able to score this headboard for $30 on OfferUp. This was actually a really great find. It didn't have any stains. It had been used in like an Airbnb before, and I had to drive quite a distance to go pick this up, but it was an amazing find. No repairs needed. It was less than what the cost of the fabric would have been, so I feel like that was a huge win. As a final detail, there was an existing full-length mirror in this room that had taken a hit from one of the children, and the corners were separating, so I reinforced the frame backing and stripped the darker finish with acetone and sanding, and then did a paint wash on top of it also. So the night before the install, my husband and I cleaned out the room, and the next morning we taped off and painted. I am a little bit of a Sherwin snob. I refuse to get paint anywhere else just because their paint works so well. We use Sherwin Emerald line in the color Accessible Beige with a satin finish. If you're painting a room, I just highly recommend using good paint. It covers better, it levels better, it often will eliminate the need for a primer, and with 2 coats in this bedroom, we were done. So you often have to work less, you need less product, and I think the cost ends up being equal in the end. This rug was generously gifted by my mother-in-law. I feel it anchors the bed and defines the space over the carpet. The bedding came in at about $115, and she already had her own down insert. Looking at it now, I'd say it's about 75% complete. There's room to layer in textiles, pillows, artwork, and personal pieces. She has already added in some family photos, and over time the room will end up evolving. So the big question, did we stay under budget? Technically, the target was $600, and technically we did not hit that, but here's where everything landed before we do the final reveal.
Is this the most beautiful room in the world? Oh my god! This looks so good. Good job, Jessica.
It looks like so much bigger.
It really does.
What do you think?
Room is amazing.
Now, if you completely hated this makeover, I'm confident you will communicate it in a thoughtfully worded comment. And if this wasn't your aesthetic, I strongly advise you to not watch the next one, because if a tight budget made you uncomfortable, wait until you see what happens when the space itself is actually extremely tiny. The next project is a super small room that somehow has to function as both a guest room and an office. If that video is live, it'll be right here. So see you next time. Keep curating, keep rearranging things that don't technically need to be rearranged, and remember, you could do a lot on a limited budget.